start the meeting, please, this afternoon by commencing with housekeeping matters in the first instance. Just to advise you then, please, that this meeting is being live streamed on the internet and recorded for archive purposes. Should any member wish to speak at the meeting, could you please use the raise your hand function in Teams? When you do come on, when the chairman does invite you to speak, could you please also have your camera on as required by legislation? Should you throughout the meeting have any technical difficulties, could you please contact the Democratic Services Officer who will help you, and obviously let us know as soon as you can. Thank you very much. If I could now hand over to the chair, thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Diolch yn fawr a chroeso i'r cyfarfod o'r Pwyllgor Gwasanaethau Democratiaeth. Good afternoon, welcome to this afternoon's meeting of the Vale of Morgan Democratic Services Committee. We have one substantive item on today's agenda, which is the analysis of the timing of council meeting survey that was carried out by councillors a few months ago. If we could start the meeting, first of all, do we have any apologies for absence this afternoon?
Actually, Chair, we don't have any. All members now are present.
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of the minutes of the last meeting, which took place on the 14th of November 2022, are members happy to accept those minutes as an accurate account and reflection of the meeting which took place? Could I have somebody to move those, please?
Yes, Chair, I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor Hanks. And somebody second?
I'll second, Neil.
Yep, thank you very much, Councillor Thomas. Item 3 then is the declarations of interest under the Council's Code of Conduct. Do we have any today? No, thank you very much. Item 4 then is report of the Head of Democratic Services in relation to Section 6 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011, the timing of council meetings. I believe that Karen Bowen is taking this item. Thank you, Karen.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. Jeff Rees, the Operational Manager, is with us today, but as I prepared the report, if you don't mind, I'll commence, and no doubt Jeff will interject as and when required. Thank you. If I can just commence by starting then by saying that obviously this survey was undertaken as part of statutory guidance, which requires that we do undertake a survey, and the advice is, you know, following the elections. Obviously, I know the elections were last May, but with the induction and with everything that was going on, obviously this took some time, and we commenced it in December following consideration at the meeting of Democratic Services in November. So attached to Appendix 1 is the statutory guidance, and Appendix 2 is a copy of the questionnaire and the results of that questionnaire, which I've also paraphrased within the report. And as paragraph 2.2 states, 22 out of the authority's 54 members actually completed the survey. That is an overall figure of 41%, which in the main is a good percentage result for the survey, and you know, so on and so forth. I'll go through the report, and if you don't mind, if you could provide the questions after, that would be great. So the first paragraph I refer to then is 2.4. You could see that question 2 in the survey referred to, do you find the arrangements for the current cycle timetable of meetings satisfactory? 91% of responses provided saying yes, they did, and 9% stating no. I mean, further along in the report, you'll see that the timetable and times were also then broken down by each committee, and you'll see the members' responses relating to the times that they would have preferred for meetings to commence. Notwithstanding the fact that any committees that do take place, the chair also has the right to amend those dates and times as required, you know, throughout the year. But obviously the timetable of meetings is approved by Cabinet, and any recommendations that you wish to make today would have to go to Cabinet for approval. If you look at question 3, it talks about, is there a day of the week that you would find it difficult to attend meetings? And the majority of the 19 responses received to this question advised that they considered the current timetable again worked well. Question 6 talked about your preference in relation to the timings of meetings, which I referred to earlier. And you can see the responses in that paragraph and in the table in that report. As you will see at the end of that table, it's got an NB which refers to most meetings which to be taking place at 6 o'clock. But you will find there are a number of asterisks within that timetable. Like, for example, licensing. Members are more than happy, the group that obviously responded to the survey, to consider 10 o'clock was sufficient to keep licensing. Community liaison, again, that was always met at 6 o'clock. So did voluntary sector, and members obviously preferred to continue with 6 o'clock. There is a change in relation to planning. Members are suggesting, 9 members are saying 6 o'clock, others are saying 4 o'clock. But again, as I mentioned, this is for further discussion and approval by cabinets. But again, we can have those discussions later. If you go on then to, for example, question 10, do you consider that meetings should have a set meeting length? This, you will see from the responses here, was a number of responses. We had some saying 4 hours, some saying 3, some saying 5, you know, but overall, you can work it out to be, most members would look to 2 or 3 hours for a meeting to take place, with 50%, over 50% saying they preferred training to be no longer than 2 hours. And then question 13, we put this question and as you can remember from the November meeting, where it was suggested that we ask the question about what way do members prefer to hold a meeting, and the hybrid solution came out first here in relation to having a meeting in person and remote. So the meeting can be held in person or remote. So you'll have some members who might say, I can't make it to the actual building, to civic offices, so I will do the meeting remotely. And as you will see, you know, that received most of the response that members were more than willing to go for hybrid, because that, in their view, that suited the majority of members, especially if they had caring duties or they couldn't make it in time to get, or they were away, you know, they may be on conference or they may be away on holiday, and if they wanted to actually join the meeting, they could still do it wherever they were. So those are responses that came through. If you look at paragraph 2.7, that refers to some of the key elements I've picked out, which refers to the fact that what the committee may wish to consider and making recommendations to Cabinet if you see fit. No changes made to the Council's current timings for meetings. A set length for training be recommended to be 2 hours, as suggested by over 50% of those that were surveyed. The timing of Cabinet meetings to remain as is, and also recognising that that is a matter for the Leader of the Council. And then with regard to question 13, that most meetings going forward, well, all meetings take place on a hybrid basis. And I think, unless obviously members want me to run through the appendix actually speaks for itself with a commentary from members who actually commented on the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Karen. I think 40% of the membership of the council responding to a survey isn't fantastic. I'm sure we'd hope that more people would respond, something that obviously has an impact upon their own experiences as a councillor, but it is a substantive number of council as well. So this is perhaps representative of people's opinions. The reason that we're discussing this today is obviously that the Cabinet is going to be approving the timetable of meetings for the 23-24 municipal year at its meeting on Thursday, and so I don't know if we'll be able to get any comments from here to Cabinet for us on Thursday, but I think it's important that everybody is cited of the findings of the survey before before Cabinet makes that decision for itself on Thursday. Can I invite comments from members of the committee? And see Councillor Thomas has his hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I agree with you about the poor or comparatively poor turnout in the survey, given that as councillors we should be engaged. It is alarming that only around 40% appear to be. Given that it's difficult to extrapolate the opinion of the majority from this, as I would assume that, like with most things, you're only going to hear from those who have opinions, whereas the majority won't care. Or are happy with the present circumstances, the present setup. Certainly, one of our duties, I think, as a committee is to look at ways to extend the democratic involvement of people in council, standing as councillors, working as councillors, and so forth. But it's a difficult circle to square, I guess, because what suits one demographic would not suit another. For example, there are comments within the report about people wanting to meet during the day. That wouldn't suit a lot of people who are in employment, who would find it difficult to attend during the day. There are comments about childcare provision and so on, and the need to have a consistent approach, which I would support, a consistent sort of timetabling. That, I mean, there were some people wanting variations and so on, whereas it is easier to plan your year, in fact, if you get it all in your diary straight ahead at the start of the year, and there is a scope within the council for people to choose which committees they go on, partly through interest, but also I'd suggest partly through accessibility. So if you would find it difficult to be at a committee that meets at 10 o'clock in the morning, as a couple of them do, then don't choose those committees, and discuss it with your group leader if you have one, and look at a more suitable timetable committee. I'm thinking like this is JCF meets at 10 o'clock, for example, and that is to meet officers and union obligations. You know, I know, we're both on that, and it can be difficult for other people to get to those meetings, but because of officer time and our time and union time, that's the time for that meeting. There's talk within the report about a lot of people wanting, or some people wanting, in-person attendance at committees, and I'd suggest that some of those people that are saying they want to see all committees in person are ignoring the fact that, say, early retirement, which would involve dragging people in from all corners of the county, meets for about 10 minutes. Usually at most. It's a very short meeting, and it would seem illogical for people to drive an hour in for a 10-minute meeting and then drive an hour home. So it is a matter of horses for courses. I'd suggest that the way we have it structured at the moment does seem to suit the majority, and I would say leave it alone. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. I think just for clarification, I think the question 13 you're referring to there about the distinction between hybrid meetings and fully remote meetings. I don't think there was an option provided for in-person only meetings. I think the only one that's suggested is an in-person only meeting is the Senior Management Appointments Committee when it's making and having an interview. So I think that's
I think there've been comments with certainly there've been comments in council and so forth about going to full in-person meetings, and at various other committees. It has been raised by individuals as being a preference, and no, I agree. Within the report it doesn't say that, but I'm just raising that as a hair, if you like, that people have pursued in the past.
Thank you for that, Councillor Thomas. I think that the question is phrased deliberately like that because of the requirements of Welsh Government to often hold meetings in a hybrid fashion and not to do them in a in-person only unless there are specific extenuating circumstances. So that's just a response to that. Sorry, Councillor Carroll.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Karen, for the report. I would agree with Councillor Thomas, having looked at the responses, at least of those members who completed the survey, that bar one or two exceptions, it is pretty much an endorsement of the status quo and the timetable that we have at present. I mean, from a personal perspective, I prefer meetings to be in the evenings. I accept that there are some circumstances where that's not practical, some of which are committees on which I sit, like senior management appointment. I think that when you're interviewing candidates, clearly it has to be done during the day. It's not practical to do that in the evening in the same way. So I accept that. Another one would be licensing. I think that ideally, I'd like that meeting to take place later from a personal preference, but I'm very much aware that the people for whom that committee exists, applicants, it very much suits them to have the meeting in the morning and would impact their business adversely, potentially, were it to be moved later in the day. So again, I endorse that. And I think when I completed the survey, I did pretty much, it's a while ago now, but I pretty much, I think, did choose every meeting as the current time is allotted. But so my question really would be, will we now expect the status quo to be maintained given the endorsement that it's had from this survey? And then a second point, again, in relation to something that's already been raised, that's the issue of remote meetings or hybrid meetings. From a personal point of view, I feel very strongly that for all meetings, the option should be made available for people to attend that meeting in person. I also, however, agree with Councillor Thomas that I think in practice, if you have a meeting that sits for 10 minutes, quite frankly, it does make more sense to hold that remotely rather than drag everybody in. So I think there does need to be a degree of common sense attached to this. And I also think that we should adopt a pragmatic approach to how we implement it. That said, I do think that the hybrid option should be available so that those who wish to attend in person are able to do so. So a question following on from that is, can we now expect future meetings to be held in hybrid format? I appreciate that back in January, we were supposed to be having an update on the issues with Civico. And then following on from that, can we expect our full council meeting on the 6th of March to be held in a hybrid format with the option to attend that meeting in person? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. I think that it's worth noting that there are two different issues within the report that we have here. One of them is regarding the timing and length of meetings, and the other is the locations, which falls under the location of meeting policy, which it was agreed when it was passed in April last year, will be reviewed after 12 months. And the intention, as we discussed in the meeting in November, was that the findings of councillors would be part of that review process. There were a couple of other points within Councillor Carroll's comments there that I think may be worth picking up, and I don't know if Karen or Jeff are able to do that, particularly regarding progress and the 6th of March full council meeting.
I'll pick that up if you like, Chairman. As it stands at the moment, as you know, there was a report at the back end of last year regarding, certainly a report to Cabinet regarding the programme of regression testing. That regression testing was completed at the end of last year. And a report, apologies, I've been away for a month in Australia, so I'm not fully up to date with, I briefly met with Karen this morning, but I'm not completely au fait where we are with our ICT colleagues. I am aware that a report is being prepared in reference to capturing the information from the regression testing, but in terms of when that will be going to Cabinet, I genuinely don't know that. And on that basis, I would suggest, given the circumstances with regard to a report needing to go to Cabinet and obviously being made aware to all members of the council, I would hazard a guess that the 6th of March may not be feasible by way of being provided in a hybrid format, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll, do you want to come back on that?
If I could come back on that, I'm deeply concerned to hear that. I think it's unacceptable if that meeting isn't held in a hybrid format. I mean, I've made my views quite clear that I think that the level of scrutiny provided and the interaction in debate is of a higher standard with an in-person meeting. And we're talking about the budget meeting here. So we are setting hundreds of millions of pounds of public expenditure. And to be honest, I do think it will be viewed on very dimly by the public if that meeting is held solely virtually and that there aren't members in the chamber debating it.
Thank you for that comment, Councillor Carroll. It is noted, but I think it's outside the the powers of this committee to make a decision upon that at this time. Councillor Hanks.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments, if I could, please. I'd also like to say that out of 22 members, only 22 members out of 54 elected. I thought that was very disappointing. But I suppose the poor response would indicate that people are happy in the majority with what's going on now. I think I'd agree with Councillor Carroll with the hybrid. I think we need to get the hybrid up and running as soon as we can. I'd also like to point out that there wasn't, I don't see why the chair can change the date and the time of meetings. For example, tomorrow has gone from 6 to 5:30. It's really inconvenient when these meetings alter in time, and we do have a vice chair. So, you know, we've planned our diary and yet, you know, at the last minute, something happens. I'm not sure I agree with that late alteration. And we're also given no reason as to why. Maybe we should or shouldn't, but it's maybe not good. What happens if you set a length of time for a meeting, say 2 hours, and the agenda isn't complete? Do we have another meeting, or do the agenda items go on to the next scrutiny meeting or the next meeting that we have? And I think somebody said that if it's chaired well, there's no need to be longer than 2 hours. But if you've got presentations and a contentious issue, it's very difficult not to give each member the time to ask the question. So I think that would be sometimes, in some cases, very difficult to keep to the 2 hours. And if you are chair and you try to cut somebody off or try to shorten it, you're open to then to be criticised that you haven't let everybody speak. There was also a mention of the public questions, public and members' questions at full council, and I do think something needs to be done because I feel that that is getting out of hand and a considerable time is being spent on that. So those were points that I'd like to make. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hanks. I think there was some process questions within there, although they may be slightly hypothetical. Is there anything there that Jeff or Karen would like to respond to?
I could certainly pick that up, Chairman. In terms of the timings, the duration, I think that would be whilst having regard to the responses that come in from the survey, I think it's clearly common sense that if you're in a meeting with an agenda and you know you're 2 hours into it and you're into the last item of business, for example, it's clearly sensible to deal with that business there and then. If it's a meeting where there's a majority, the issue becomes when members leave and then you haven't got a quorum. I think that's one issue. So you can't complete the meeting in any case. Some members feel that perhaps 2 to 3 hours is sufficient, but it is a response to a survey. I think as long as members take the information as presented as members in the individual views coming in on a survey, and we'll have to obviously as officers try and work through and try and find some middle ground on that. But my general view is that meetings should take as long as they need to take within a common sense view. Clearly, if you've got a council meeting at running till 3 o'clock in the morning, and I know members have said at council they're happy to stay there for as long as it takes. I don't think if members have been in work in a day and then coming into a meeting at 6 and then at 3 in the morning, and don't get me wrong, there is clear instances of various democratic bodies across the world meeting at long hours. You know, in America, for example, there's clear cases. But whether you get the best out of members and the best decisions at 3 o'clock in the morning is again, you know, I'll leave that to members to consider whether or not that's the best way forward. But my general view and experience over 30 odd years working with meetings is that the chair is fundamentally the one in charge of the meeting. So if the chair thinks that meeting needs to be, you know, and the business needs to be dealt with, I think, you know, ultimately that will rest with the chair. He may want to take the views of the members around him and take them with him, you know, in terms of, agreement. But my view is that the chair is ultimately responsible for the duration of the meeting and the business on the agenda. And I would simply leave it at that, because for an officer to tell members up to a point, you know, meetings should be curtailed at a certain time is difficult. But we are also looking at things like diversity and trying to make sure that meetings fit in with everybody's needs. I think Councillor Thomas made that point early on about it's difficult to square the wheel in terms of everybody's needs, but just trying to find the middle ground in some respects, bearing in mind there are responsibilities that members have. There's a work-life balance, the caring responsibilities, whether that's a child or whether that's an elderly relative. All these things have to be factored in. So it's just going back to the point about trying to put a timeline on a meeting. I think that ultimately would rest with chairs of each committee. I hope that tries to deal with that, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. You happy with that, Councillor Hanks?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I've got a number of hands raised at the moment, so I'm going to Councillor Haynes first, and then Councillor Marnie afterwards. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Karen, for the report. First off, I really welcome the idea of a 2-hour fixed on the training, because a lot of the training sessions did stretch a little bit too long. And I also reiterate Councillor Hanks' concerns about any restriction in council meeting times, because who doesn't get to speak? And that's ultimately what would happen. The chair will choose who doesn't speak, and that's going to become an issue. Apart from that, the only other thing that has come up, and it's come up not really in the report, but I think it's so important that we need, if we can push it forward, is the fact that hybrid does mean hybrid. It does mean people can be there. And people who have problems with screens are being slightly excluded. So we need to stress, I can't stress the point enough, that if it's hybrid, you have to have the option of people being able to be in the meeting. And I can't see why, after almost a year of me being a councillor, that this hasn't been sorted out yet. But that being that, I'll obviously have to take that up in the full council meeting, and I appreciate that this isn't the place for that particular point. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor Marnie, followed by Councillor Perks. Councillor Marnie, please.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Okay, that's good. Yeah, a couple of points to make up people have raised. The participation in this thing. Well, let me tell those who've raised their concerns at lack of participation. I didn't participate for the simple fact the Cabinet are going to do whatever they're going to do this afternoon. Doesn't matter what I think, doesn't matter what you think. The very fact it's been mentioned here, it's unlikely they'll even be hearing any of the comments we're making here. What a farce. So that's why I didn't. Hang on, my phone's gone. I'll call them. Can you bring me back, please? Sorry. So that's the reason I didn't participate. Okay, there is no point. We haven't got a vote on it. They'll do whatever they wish to do. Times. Now it's fairly obvious in a survey. This time is going to be a million times. Sometimes will suit some people. Sometimes won't suit others. When I first became a councillor, I was actually managing teams of 25 engineers on different contracts. I packed that in because I knew that would interfere with what I'd undertaken to do when I got elected. So I don't have sympathy. People working, of course, people have to work. If the meeting's arranged for the 6:30 slot or whatever, and it helps them, that's great. I took my responsibilities, my decision, no complaints. I appreciate that others may have other circumstances. And that brings me at the times of the meeting. When I'm told there's a meeting, I'm there. If you don't want to do that, don't be a councillor, don't stand for council. Make it easier for people if you can, fine, but that's the time. I've cancelled something today that was on exactly this time. Okay, well, I rearranged it, I should say, to be honest with you, because I had to be here. So I'm here boring you all to tears now, do it. Hybrid. Yes, this is the place to talk about hybrid meeting. As Ian Johnson well knows, he attended a meeting with me where I gave my forthright views on the fiasco of the Vale IT department yet again, and that absolute joke of a meeting, the one meeting he did attend on hybrid, that went so horribly wrong. How many months ago was that now? It must be stretching 6-7 months, I don't know. Still not sorted out. Hybrid is what hybrid means. Some people stay in another location, but those of us who wish to attend the chamber, we do that. This isn't hybrid. And what I find quite ludicrous and almost laughable, or shall we substitute that for disgusting, is that when Welsh Assembly, or government, whatever they're called these days, issue an edict and it suits the council to batter us with that, what's statutory? We've got to do what we've been told, When it suits you guys, boof, that's it. You use it as a club to hammer us with. But when it applies to you guys, in this particular instance, for example, oh, we'll just drift on from month to month with our IT department, the civical people. We give it a try months ago. They told us we have to do it, but oh, here we go. We're still not doing it. So, I mean, it is for this committee. Why isn't this committee actually putting forward a complaint to the Welsh Government, as they're the ones who issued this edict about hybrid meetings? My other thing about hybrid meetings also is basically, I'm in favour of hybrid for one reason, where people may be looking after a sick relative, may on the evening suffer sickness where they still want to attend, but it would make it unfeasible for them to attend in the chamber. Car breakdown, if you like, but that would be a very few number of people. I'm quite sure a lot of councillors see this as whoopee. I don't have to dash into the council chamber. In fact, when we had this discussion in a meeting quite some weeks ago, or months ago, I should say, we had 3 councillors, and I made comment at the time. I think one of them said, oh, I'd have to come in from Penarth. Oh dear, I'm sorry to hear that. One said she didn't like talking to people face to face. Honestly, how did that election leaflet go? Please vote for me to represent you. Oh, by the way, I don't like speaking to people face to face. And we had another one said she's got lots to do. That's not the reason for hybrid meetings. Get in the chamber. Those who are generally incapacitated or looking after somebody, that is an added thing, and it's good and great for you guys that you can still participate. I heard mention there of hybrid meetings that might suit somebody on holidays. Here's an idea. Arrange your holidays around the meetings. That's what I've managed to do for 10 years. I mean, anybody who attends a hybrid meeting here from abroad who's on holiday should be struck off the council as far as I'm concerned. It's as simple as that. I think Jeff mentioned as well, that was the other thing that got me, with the length of time of meetings. If a meeting takes 10 hours to discuss everything, that's how long it's take. That's the commitment you gave. That's the commitment I gave. I've lost count of the number of meetings that have been dragging on, and I've had people saying, oh, shall we cut this short? It's getting on a bit. Well, pack it in. Don't be a councillor. It's as simple as that. It takes as long as it takes. I mean, really, some of these people, if that's your commitment, I'm not doing anybody in particular here, you know, just pack it in. We don't need you. And Jeff also mentioned that famous expression used to get me, members leave, so you might not have a quorum. I've attended meeting after meeting after meeting of years where members used to turn up. It's not quite so bad now, thankfully. Members used to turn up, get marked in for their attendance. 20 minutes later, they were off. When it came to questions, you had that whole list of questions, and we've never addressed the amount of questions that are put up after the game. Always by the same people, of course. I see a wry smile come from me and Ian's face there. From about 40 questions, it's not good enough for some councillors. Oh, I've got to go now. Just surprise, just before the questions appear. Well, I sometimes get fed up with the amount of questions and the length of meetings, but you don't see me sloping off any meeting. I stick there and I have the decency to listen to what people have had to say, what people have had to ask, what answers have been prepared for them. So that's another thing with me. It's got a little bit better now, but I'm sure Jeff will know, everybody here who's been a councillor quite some time will know the same people over and over and over. And that's the reason, actually, why we now have an attendance percentage meeting displayed on our website. And the reason I pushed for that was after noticing the same members time after time after time, either not turning up or leaving early. And that's the reason I was forced that to after several votes. So quite frankly, just to sum up very briefly, if there's a meeting, you get there on time. As simple as that. If we can arrange times that help people, I'm all for that. Hybrid meetings, it's not an excuse to watch Coronation Street while you're attending the meeting. Get in the council chamber where we can discuss things face to face. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Marnie. I don't know if there are any comments there that required direct response from Democratic Services, but just to note there are 2 members of Cabinet who are present at today's meeting, and I'm sure they'll be explaining to their colleagues what's taking place today in terms of the debate. Jeff, Karen, anything there? No? Great. In that case, Councillor Perks.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm quite happy with the status quo as is. I didn't fill in the survey. The reason being, obviously my IT skills need training because I couldn't find it. So, but I apologise for not filling it in. But I'm quite happy with the status quo. I think, you know, we want to encourage more people to be councillors and a diverse group of people to be councillors, you know, and if that means a new councillor is less intimidated and able to speak at a council meeting by being hybrid, then so be it. I'd rather have that than somebody come into the chamber and feel that they can't speak because they feel intimidated. I know you might find it hard to believe, but my first few months when I was there, I was quite intimidated, and it took me a long time to actually speak at full council. You know, and I've worked with the public for years, but just that being in that environment, not quite knowing how things worked and things like that, I'd rather have hybrid meetings where somebody has the ability to put their hand up and actually speak than say nothing at all. You know, also we talk about, you know, sort of equality. We want as many people to be able to attend as councillors as possible. So yeah, caring responsibilities, whether that's looking after children, looking after, you know, sort of adults, even if they're away from their home. If let's use the 21st century technology that we have. I'm quite happy if people are away from their home, but they're still attending meetings and have read all the papers and things like that, then yes, fantastic that the councillors have attended. I also want to apologise to Sally Hanks as chair of E&R. The reason that it's earlier is because we got quite a few contentious issues there for tomorrow. So apologies for that, Sally. And I note that, you know, not being given the reason why, I think that would have been helpful. But yeah, I think there's quite a few of the public might be coming to speak, and there's a couple of contentious issues. So that's why it's earlier, but I note what you say. Also, I just wondered from Democratic Services officers, and something that Councillor Thomas said, that people won't pick meetings that are, you know, sort of in their work time or whatever, whether there's anything that Democratic Services do can highlight to people that councillors are able to ask for time off from their employer. I know sometimes, you know, depending what the job you do, you might not be able to, but highlighting that bit of the policy and giving people sort of some sort of support, because if you're a new councillor, it can be quite nerve-wracking. Go in and ask your boss, all right, I need this time off because I'm going to be attending that meeting, whether that helps as well. And I think that's all I wanted to say, really. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Jeff, do you want to come back? Anything there?
Only in regard to the issue that Councillor Perks referred to, members' entitlement in legislation for time off. That was something that we were picking up as part of the candidates events that we were holding probably March last year. We, to be honest with you, frankly, we had 3 people attend it. We put an awful lot of resources into, by and large, setting it up. We did a lot of social media activity, and I think we had three individuals. We curtailed it from 3 sessions down to 1, and in that information that we relayed to candidates was such issues like, yes, you can get time off. There's legislation in place to allow you to participate in undertaking the various democratic roles that elected members have to do, not just at a principal level, but also a town and community council level as well, because, you know, members do have 2 hats. They wear 2 hats, not just authority, but the town and community councils. So we can certainly highlight that by all means, but it's something that we would have been putting in the candidates packs as well when it went out back for the elections last year. So it's not as if we haven't given it thought, and we have tried to cover it off as best as we can do. There's only so much we can do, because you can only take a horse to water. And if members or individuals don't want to engage in that process, and it's somewhat ironic you use the word engage when we're actively trying to do it as an organization, to go out and look for more diverse candidates and engage not just with candidates may come through the traditional route, but the more independent type of councillor that would come forward. And again, we for some reason that we can't, despite all that effort and resources going into it, we have a fairly poor engagement in that activity. But we will certainly highlight it, and if any member has got any specific concerns, they can certainly come to me as the statutory officer, and we can, and members, I got to say, we have had a couple of members come to us over since May elections with specific personal issues, and we've dealt with those. Karen will be able to nod in along there, but she knows that we've had a couple of conversations with members regarding support and such like for personal circumstances.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. I've got 2 hands currently raised. One person has spoken previously, so I'll call them in last if they don't mind. I just wanted to check. I thought I saw Councillor Prothero's hand raised earlier. I was checking if she wanted to contribute still.
I think most people have covered what I would have said, to be honest with you, Ian. I think hybrid is a good idea. It would be great if Civico was working, but Teams works quite well. I think the timings of our meetings, you won't be able to suit everybody. That is really true. But I welcome that we can have a certain amount of flexibility. As chair, I would never want to change the times of meetings. I think that's important for everyone to have that structure. And just like Sandra, this time around, it really is just because we've got such a full agenda. And I'm conscious of the fact that, as Councillor Marnie has said, it could take a long time, and it'll take as long as it takes. But there's only so much concentrating and only so much contributions that that people can make that are meaningful. So we've started a little bit earlier this time around, just really to anticipate a full debate, because we do want everyone to debate. And that's it, really. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Prothero. Councillor Goodjohn.
Yes, just a few points, a lot of which has already been raised by other councillors, so I won't dwell on them. Mostly, I'm concerned about Councillor Haynes is on the call. In the meeting, he will know how passionate he is about data integrity. I'm slightly concerned that on the original document we had in November, it stated that it would ask councillors to only indicate preferences for meetings that they attend, that on committees that they are a part of. I don't think that has been the case from the data tables, that most councillors have done that in this case, which might explain why certain smaller committees had a bit more of a split than others. But I would generally agree that it is with the status quo. And on that point, I think maybe this is a good opportunity to review it with each chair, and maybe this should be sent to scrutiny and other chairs and vice chairs, and maybe even go to the chairs and vice chairs group that has been set up again. Maybe this is an item for them to discuss and consider. Otherwise, I would generally agree with what most people have said. The other thing is the limit on meeting times. I do absolutely agree that a 2-hour limit should probably be set on training, because otherwise you do tend to see people disengage, and perhaps to have more regular training over a broader period of time, and also on that point to have this survey in future absolutely closer to the election, to try and get a higher turnout of councillors, and also to have less of that kind of that bias towards what is the status quo that we will already have from maintaining councillors. And finally, absolutely, this is another thing that chairs should be considering. that is on the chairs to decide how long the meeting goes on for, and to consider if they need another meeting or if there's too many items on this agenda, and maybe just a review on that, perhaps again with the chairs and vice chairs group, would be a good idea.
Thank you very much, Councillor John. Coming Councillor Thomas, and if there's anybody else who wants to speak, please indicate to do so.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry for coming back in. I apologise to Sandra. I should have mentioned that the statutory requirement for employers to give people time to attend meetings if they're elected councillors. She's quite right about that. In terms, one of the other things I forgot to mention was my support for the idea of breaks if the meetings that do go on over, say, 2 hours, that there should be chairs should be mindful of maybe a full agenda goes along with a full bladder, and that's comfort breaks are helpful, particularly for those of us who are getting slightly older and have old man's bladder problems that require comfort breaks. So yeah. At agenda conferences, it is down to the chair and vice chair, along with the officers, to look at the burden of the meeting and how long it's likely to be, and maybe adjust things and push things back if possible. But it's not always possible. Sometimes things are required to carry on on those meetings because of other constraints, other requirements, and so sometimes it is unavoidable to sort of limit the length of time of a meeting in that way. It would be nice if we could every time, but sometimes we can't, as we all know. Anyway, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Thomas. I can't see any other speakers. Sorry, Karen, do you want to come back in at this point?
Yes, Chair, only on a couple of points really. The first one, just to let all members know, I'm sure you do, but just a reminder that the report, with the agenda for this meeting was sent to all councillors, so they would be able to have a look at that if they wanted to, and obviously on the internet. Obviously, it's not debated at every meeting that Councillor Good John was referring to, but it has been sent so that all members can see what the comments were that were received. Going back to comments that were made by Councillor Carroll regarding meetings like ERR, for example, and Senior Management Committee, the results of this survey, I will be taking a lot of that information on board when I do the review for the MLM policy, and that will come before members in due course. So I will be taking some of the comments there. And notwithstanding you've mentioned hybrid, I do appreciate that some members have said some type of meetings will be better in person. So we'll put those comments in those documents as well. I just wanted to make those comments really. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Karen. So I think that moves us to sort of summing up the discussion. I think that we've had quite a wide range of debate here, but there's also some fundamentals that I think come out of the report that we've got before us. Firstly is that the overwhelming majority of respondents were content with the current arrangements for meeting times, broadly speaking. There's an interesting discussion that I think was raised there about when this survey should be sent out to people, because on the one hand, people have had 8 months so to get used to the times and understand whether that works for them or not, and maybe if they had that right at the beginning, they wouldn't know whether or not these things worked, particularly if they were new. So there's pieces of learning or consideration for democratic services in terms of this survey the next time it's done, which will of course be the after the next election. So there's a thought process then about what is the best time to send this out. But the recommendation, I think, is that councillors who have completed the survey are relatively speaking happy with the timings, and therefore there's no suggestion that time should be changed. The further recommendation that on the basis of responses that training should be no more than 2 hours. I think it's 50% of respondents rather than over 50%. So if we just remove that word, so 11 of 22 50% of those surveyed said that 2 hours was the appropriate training time. There was no single time length that was felt appropriate for by those completing the survey. I think that, as it's been something that's been touched on a few times tonight, it's the prerogative of the chair, but also in terms of that agenda conference and weighing up how long something is likely to take. I've been involved in a few. I've been here for 10 years. Obviously, I've been involved in a few council meetings that have taken between 3 and maybe 5 hours to complete. Most scrutinies I've ever been involved with have usually been over within 3. I've maybe been in a couple of very contentious plannings that have gone on for longer than 3, but most meetings I think fall within that 2 to 3 hour maximum. But certainly it should be considered by chair and officers when they're in that agenda conference. Is this going to go on far longer than would be normal? Can things be moved to a different meeting, or is a separate meeting required for particularly controversial items which may have large numbers of public speakers and a large number of councillor involvement as well? But in terms of the recommendation from this meeting, I think the suggestion is that the training be curtailed to no more than 2 hours, but that other meetings be dependent upon the agenda. The suggestion is the timing of cabinet remains as it is, but that's a matter for cabinet rather than for this group here. There's I think a lot of discussion about hybrid and the multi-location meetings policy, and obviously there's a distinction between the policy itself, which a review is coming to us in our April meeting ahead of its discussion here and then hopefully adoption by cabinet, etc., and the practical implementation of the policy, which is where the council is currently falling down in the eyes of many people. So those are separate issues because we're not responsible for the operation element here from this as a committee, but we will, I think, be very interested in debating the policy, and as a result of that, hopefully by that time we will have things in operation so we can have an informed discussion on the resourcing of that as much as the principle of it as well. We are reminded that chairs are able to change the timing of and dates of meetings, but as a number of people have commented in the survey and today, having the calendar of meetings provides a level of stability and certainty for people in working out their municipal year, and so having that published early is helpful. I did appreciate Councillor Goodjohn's suggestion that perhaps this report might also be discussed by the chairs and vice chairs committee on the basis that obviously this touches on a lot of operational matters that might wish to be brought to their attention and consideration, if nothing else. I saw a hand there from Councillor Thomas. Would you like to make a contribution, Councillor Thomas?
No. I was trying to react and put a thumbs up to the scrutiny chairs and vice chairs. I hit the wrong button. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Neil. I'd like to think that that sums up the discussion that we've had in this meeting in terms of of recommendations. Our members, other than Councillor Thomas, has already indicated his support. Is everybody happy with that, or anything else that people would like us to comment on as a committee? Councillor
Happy Chair. Yeah, happy Chair.
Thanks. Okay, so I think we have a, if I move that, and it's been seconded by a number of people there. Is there any further comments from Head of Democratic Services or from Karen?
I just want to make sure, Chair, that that's respected then, that the fact that these recommendations will go to Cabinet for consideration with their calendar of meetings on Thursday.
Yes, I'm very happy with that, Karen.
Oh, that's fine.
Everybody happy with that? Great, I'll take that as agreement. So thank you very much, everybody, for participating in the meeting this afternoon. There are no urgent items at item 5, and there are no items under part 2, which is item 6. Therefore, I'll bring this meeting to a close, and the next meeting will take place in April. In the meantime, those who haven't, given the discussion we've had about about participation, please remember to complete your learning needs assessment form as well.
Councillor Hanks has a hand up for Chair.
Can I just ask for the date of the next meeting for Democratic meeting? It's in April. Have you got a date, please?
11th of April.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Sorry, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Just about.